President, please be seated. The court is back in session, and the floor is given to the lead co-lawyers for civil parties to resume their questioning. Lao Junti, thank you. Good afternoon once again, the chamber. I have two last questions to put to Madame Koh Mui. My questions are related to the information that you received when you got back home. So what were you told about the fact that your father had been arrested together with your siblings? So where were they sent to? Answer. I received news from villagers that my parents had been sent back to Vietnam. So I was told that we had to pack our belongings in order to go back to Vietnam. Lawyer, thank you. And my last question, perhaps. During the Khmer Rouge and Democratic Cambodia, were you asked to get married? Answer. The chief of my mobile unit asked me to get married with a man, but I said I was not mature yet and I did not want to get married. 4 couples in my unit were asked to get married, and among the 4 couples, some refused the marriage. And because the Khmer Rouge knew that some of those couples denied the marriage, they were taken away and killed. I was so terrified at the time after hearing that people had been killed. And later on, I was sent to Tanay to work in the field doing the rice farming, and I was there living until the liberation in 1979. I had been in terrifying situation at that time, and as of now, I have this kind of terrifying feeling. Lao Junti, thank you, Madam Civil Party. Mr. President, I am concluded with my questioning. President, and the floor is now given to the co-prosecutors to put questions to the civil party. If you have, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Your Honors. Good afternoon, Council. Good afternoon, Madam Civil Party. My name is Andrew Boyle. I'm going to be asking you some questions on behalf of the co-prosecutors. I'd like to start off by revisiting what you talked about this morning. You stated this morning that you were living on Koh Se Island before the Khmer Rouge moved you and your family to Srai Cham. Can you tell us when it was that the Khmer Rouge moved you and your family to Srai Cham?
Answer. Khmer Rouge had liberated me from Kose and sent me to a school at Prey Nom. 10 days, perhaps 10 days later, I was further sent to Srai Jam, and where I had been living there until 1976. And after 1976, I parted my parents to settle in a location.
So can you tell us the month and year that you moved to Phrai Nop district?
Answer. Khmer Rouge evacuated me from Kose, and I was instructed to stay in a school until 1975 or 76, and after that time I was sent to Srai Crown.
And when you left Kose, did you have a choice about whether you and your family left Kose, or were you forced to leave Kose?
Answer. I was forced to leave. They were armed. Khmer Rouge was armed. If I did not leave, if I had not left, I would have been killed. Although that location was close to Vietnam, we were instructed to go to that location, and we were told that we could have a small business by selling coffee, selling noodles, as we wanted.
You told us this morning that your mother was of Vietnamese ethnicity and that your father was of Chinese ethnicity. Can you tell us what country or countries your parents were born in?
Answer. My mother told me that she was born originally in Vietnam, and my father was born in Cambodia.
And do you know when your mother moved to Cambodia?
Answer. I was quite young at the time, so I do not know about that.
You mentioned this morning that your aunt and uncle stated that your family was accused of being Vietnamese because they spoke Khmer with an accent. Were you aware of any other methods that the Khmer Rouge used to try to identify who was of Vietnamese ethnicity?
Answer. My parents had settled in the country for quite a long time, so everyone was aware that we were a mixed race family. My father could speak Chinese, and he could not speak Khmer very clearly.
And how about your mother? Could she speak Khmer clearly, or did she speak with an accent?
Answer. My mother did not speak Khmer well. She spoke Khmer with accent.
And you stated this morning that you were separated from your family when you were sent to work in a mobile unit in 1976. Is that correct?
Answer: yes, that is correct.
After you were sent to Prenop district, were you ever aware of the Khmer Rouge treating people of Vietnamese ethnicity differently from the way they would treat people of Khmer ethnicity?
Answer: I learned by the time that my mother had been sent away and killed. On that morning, I was mistreated and I was made to go to work, and I did not receive insufficient food to eat. I was so sad for my life. After they learned that my mother was ethnically Vietnamese, I received insufficient food to eat. I had only a watery gruel. I was mistreated because of the fact that I was half-blooded Vietnamese. I feel pain until today. I am so sad, and at the time I hid some rice to eat. We were so skinny, and my younger sibling was so skinny. And I, at that time, did not think that I would survive the regime, but it was lucky that I survived.
You just mentioned that once they discovered that your mother was Vietnamese, they gave you insufficient food. Were you aware whether other people that were discovered to have Vietnamese backgrounds were also given less food than Khmer people?
Answer: I do not know about that. Members of mobile units could have only watery porridge, and we were deprived of clean water to drink. We had the water which was salty, and for those who had a fair complexion and were considered to be Chinese, were mistreated. So it was the situation at the time was so difficult that I could not even describe how difficult it was.
After you joined the mobile unit in 1976, did you ever attend any meetings?
Answer: meetings would be held not very often. The meetings were held once in a while to encourage all of us to be active in our work, and we were instructed and asked to voice our commitment in our work. I was so skinny, as I said at the time, and when I recall the experience that I went through, I feel pain in my heart. As I said, I lost my husband and my parents, so I am so devastated every time I recall what happened to me and my family at that time. And
Do you recall whether anything was said at any of those meetings regarding people of Vietnamese ethnicity?
I cannot get your question, sir.
You just mentioned that on occasion some meetings were held when you were part of the mobile unit, and I was wondering if you recall whether anything was ever said at any of those meetings about Vietnamese people.
Answer. Sometimes the discussion was about the Vietnamese as well. I was instructed to try to speak Khmer more clearly. Meetings would happen only at night time after 7 p.m. and sometimes we were bitten by mosquitoes at night in the meetings. We were asked to weigh our commitments in our work. Some children from Srai Ambal had night blindness. And whenever I saw those children and they were mistreated, I felt so pity on them. They became, they were separated from their parents. The content of the meeting at the time was about our commitment in our work. If anyone fails to work, they would be killed.
This morning you described the events of returning to Srai Cham to visit your family and your parents and learning from a villager that they had been taken away to be killed in Kok Chiang. Just after the break, you also stated that you were provided information that they had returned to Vietnam. Can you explain what you meant when you said that you were provided information that they had been sent back to Vietnam?
Answer. Later on, villagers at Kok Chong and Srai Cham told me that, particularly the elderly, told me that my parents had been sent back to Vietnam, and some said they had been sent away and killed. And it is my understanding that they had been killed. And my mother left a message for me through the villagers that I had to take care of myself. So at that time I was so sad. I do not really want to recall the fate of my mother. I have no parents, no relatives, siblings now. I lost everything, including money. I am poor. It is the truth. I am not telling lies.
I understand, Madam Civil Party, and I apologize that some of these questions are difficult to talk about. I assure you I wouldn't ask them unless they were important. Um, so, again, my apologies for asking questions about difficult subjects. Can you tell us the year that you returned to Saricham to try to visit your family?
Answer: it was in late 1978 when I went to visit them, but it was in vain. I could not see them. I met no one. I saw only my house standing there. And when the elderly returned from work, they told me that my parents had been sent away and killed. I was crying so loudly in the street, and I asked everyone for help. So I have lost my relatives, siblings. I have lost my siblings, but I know that my relatives also lost their lives. I know that they died. I was crying along the way when I returned back, and I know that Kok Chong was the place, the execution place. People died at that location, everywhere. I dreamed that my mother had become a crocodile, and I believe from that dream that my mother perhaps had been dropped into the water. So I do not really want to recall what was happening to them. Nothing could compare my suffering to the loss of my parents and siblings. When animals died, felt we feel devastated, and I feel even more devastated when I have lost my family members.
Madam Civil Party, do you remember hearing the names of any of the militia that came to take your family away?
Answer: I do not know them. I only know that Vun, the chief of cooperative, and perhaps 4 or 5 soldiers with him came. Uncle Jring secretly told me that.
Madam Civil Party, when you were in Prey Nop district, were you ever aware of the Khmer Rouge compiling lists or registering Vietnamese or other minorities?
Answer: I do not know about that since I was in a mobile unit. Perhaps lists were compiled I may have forgotten that I could visit my house once in every half a year or once in a year for a brief moment only.
I'd like to read you two excerpts from statements of people that were in the Prenup area to see if that refreshes your memory about the compiling of lists. The first is E3/5506. This is a written record of interview of Sal Kon, who states, amongst other things, that he was in Sraicham in Prenup district from 1975 to 1979 and saw truckloads of people being transported to Kukchang prison. Question and answer 19 and 20, he says the following, which is what I would like you to focus on. Answer 19, during mid-1977, there was propaganda that they were having anyone who was Vietnamese to return to Vietnam in a trade for Cambodian families that were living in Vietnam. In my cooperative, there were more than 10 Vietnamese families. At the time, they had all those families, Vietnamese families, register their names, and then they gathered them all up and put them in trucks. A little later on, those families boarded the trucks together, and they were all taken away and killed. Question, did you see them kill anyone else? Answer 20, I saw them tie people together in lines and walk them, and some were transported in covered GMC trucks headed for Ko Chang prison. The next statement that I would like to bring to your attention is E3/5501. That's a written record of interview of Tuan Lorn, who is a deputy village chief in Prenup district. And this is at English ERN 003-73309, Khmer 003-68651, and French ERN 004-26222. And he states the following: they had me compile statistics on the people. For instance, how many were Cham, Khmer, Chinese, and Yuan, Khmer, Kampuchea, Krom. After I made the lists, I sent all the lists to the district level, to Ta Chen. Mr. Tuan Lorn then continues slightly later on at English ERN 003-73310, Khmer 003-68653, and French 004-26224, and says, quote, at that time, the ethnic Yuan, Khmer, Kampuchea, Krom were all arrested and taken away to be killed. All those arrests were made at night, and they were all sent to Kukchang Security Office. Now, Madam Civil Party, I realize that those were rather long excerpts. These individuals describe the compilation of lists and then the gathering up of Vietnamese and taking them to Kukchang prison to be executed. Does that refresh your memory that in Prenup district, lists were made of Vietnamese and perhaps other minorities?
President, please hold on, Madam Civil Party. You have the floor now, Kong Samon. Kong Samon. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to object to the question on two grounds. Number one, the quote is too lengthy. And number two, as I said earlier, the facts which were mentioned by the co-prosecutor were too general, and the civil party is not aware of those facts. She lived in Kok Se, not Kok Chong. So the statement from her before the chamber is only the presumption of, if the civil party happen to provide the answer to that question, perhaps the civil party will provide the assumption of what was happening.
Mr. President, if I could respond briefly. First, on the issue of a quote being too long, this chamber has never imposed a length on quotes that could be used. Certainly longer quotes have been used. On the second objection, as to being too general, in fact, this is quite specific. It's related to the specific district in which the civil party was moved to. Contrary to what counsel just stated, she lived in Kosei before April 1975. She then was moved by the Khmer Rouge to the relevant district, and she has stated that her family was brought to Kokchang. So I ask that I be able to proceed along this line of questioning with the civil party.
President, the chamber decides to reject the objection by Council Kung Sam-on, and that Madam Civil Party can respond to the last question put by the International Deputy Co-Prosecutor. However, in order to refresh the memory of the Civil Party, please repeat your last question so that she can respond.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Civil Party, I won't read those admittedly lengthy excerpts again, but these excerpts described the compiling of lists of Vietnamese in Prey Nop district and the use of those lists to conduct arrests. Does that refresh your memory that lists of Vietnamese or other minorities were compiled in Prey Nop district?
Please repeat your question again.
Absolutely. I read a few moments ago 2 statements by other individuals in this case, and they were in Prey Nop district, and they described the taking of lists of people who were of Vietnamese ethnicity in that district, and the use of those lists by the Khmer Rouge to conduct arrests. Does that make you recollect that you were also aware that lists were compiled in Prey Nop district of Vietnamese or other minorities?
I do not know about that, as I was in the mobile unit and I only focus on working hard there.
Thank you, Madam Civil Party. Mr. President, I'm aware of the time. I would like to ask for approximately or no more than 10 minutes to conclude my questioning.
Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you. Madam Civil Party, you stated this morning that the villager who told you that your family was taken to Cuc Chang also told you that there was a prison there. Do you recall whether you were told or whether you became aware in some other fashion of what unit of the Khmer Rouge was in charge of that prison center?
What I knew is that villagers or neighbors of my mother whispered to me that my mother was taken to Koc Chang, and I knew that there was a prison there where people were detained and shackled, and many of them died as a result. My mother, as well as my family members and relatives, were taken there too.
I'd like to read to you from another written record of interview to see if it refreshes your memory. This is E3/7750, and this is at English ERN 002755052, Khmer 0020637, and French 002750637. 3. This is a female detainee at the Coc Chiang Security Center who saw Vietnamese there, and she states that she was arrested by 2 soldiers from Division 1. Does that refresh your recollection that the Coc Chiang Security Center was run by Division 1?
President, the civil party, please hold on, and Council Kong Som-on, you have the floor. Kong Som-on, thank you, Mr. President. I again would like to object this question. The question is about the general facts in relation to the proceedings here. However, today's proceeding is focused primarily on the harms and suffering of the civil party. And if the co-prosecutor mentioned all the facts that the accused that are alleged against the accused, it is rather difficult to focus on what is before us, and that is also in reference to the presence of the civil party. She is here to provide the chamber with the statement of her personal harm and suffering, and not about the general facts.
Mr. President, a similar objection was raised by counsel yesterday. It was rapidly rejected. This issue has come up repeatedly. We are entitled to ask civil parties who appear during the victim impact statements regarding factual matters as well. I ask that I be allowed to proceed.
President, the objection by Council Kong Som-on is sustained, and the Deputy International Co-Prosecutor, you are reminded to refer to E315/1, that is a document by the Chamber, in particular paragraph 8, that the hearing of a victim's statements limited to the facts within the segment of the trial 002/02. As for the general statements of harm and sufferings, it is not necessary to separate the general facts and what happens to the civil party herself. For that reason, you need to refresh your questioning based on the instructions in that document. We actually have given some leeway to your team yesterday, in particular on the implementation of the general policy regarding the targeted groups. However, your question is not related to the implementation of the general policies for the targeted groups, in particular the Cham, the Vietnamese, or the former officials of the Republic, of the Khmer Republic, and the civil party, you are instructed not to respond to the last question.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may, and perhaps I was not clear in responding, this relates to the targeting of the Vietnamese. Specifically, as I was about to address, this security center was run by an individual who was called as a witness in this section by this chamber. And therefore, because the civil party has testified that her family was brought to that civil security center and executed, and we have had the leadership of that security center testify for us, I believe that this falls squarely within the targeting of the Vietnamese and within case 2-2. And I ask that I be able to ask what would be only about maybe one or two more questions regarding this security center.
The chamber has already ruled on this point. If your question is related to the facts, that is on the application of the general policies, that is separate from the relevant facts within this segment, and your question is not part of the scope of case 002/02.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Civil Party, did you ever learn or hear the Khmer Rouge discussing any policy towards people of Vietnamese ethnicity?
I heard that because my mother was of the Vietnamese or Chinese origin, that they would be killed after they had been taken away.
And did you hear that stated by Khmer Rouge officials? Or if not, who did you hear it stated by?
I heard it from Vươn Son, who was in charge of an elderly unit in the cooperative. When I went to visit home, I heard him talking about this. So when I did not see my mother when I visited home, I knew straight away that she was taken away and that she would be killed.
Did you ever hear any Khmer Rouge state that Vietnamese who did not leave Cambodia would be smashed?
I heard that because even in my village, people had been taken away and smashed.
Thank you, Madam Civil Party. Thank you, Mr. President. I have no further questions.
President, I'd like now to hand the floor to the defense teams. First, to the defense team for Nunjir to put questions to this civil party. You may proceed.
ក្រុមប្រឹក្សាជំនះសូមគោរពភាគីទាំងអស់សូមជម្រាបសួរលោកស្រីដើមម្ដងរដ្ឋបវនីខ្ញុំបាទឈ្មោះលីវសវណ្ណាជាសហមេធាវីជាតិនៅក្នុងក្រមការពារក្តីលោកនួនជាខ្ញុំសូមសួរសំណួរលោកស្រីមួយចំនួនទី1គឺតាក់ទងនឹងការចម្លៀសប្រជាជនវៀតណាមនឹងចេញពីកោះសេះ
បាទជប់អត់សិនអត់មានការបកប្រែជាភាសាអង់គ្លេសមន្ត្រីរដ្ឋបាលតុលាការពិនិត្យមើលបញ្ហាបច្ចេកទេសអង្គុយសិនចុះមានបញ្ហាអាចចំណាយពេលវេលារហូតដល់5នាទីនោះបាទឥឡូវនេះដល់ពេលសំស្របនឹងសម្រាប់ដែរហើយឥឡូវអង្គប្រកាសសម្រាប់ចាប់ពីនេះទៅរហូតដល់ម៉ោង3ខ្វះ15នាទីសូមអញ្ជើញចូលវិញដើម្បីបន្តកិច្ចដំណើរការសកម្មភាពសម្រាប់ចុះមន្ត្រីរដ្ឋបាលតុលាការរួមផ្ដល់កម្លាំងសម្រាប់នៅបន្ទប់រងចាំសម្រាប់ដើមម្ដងរដ្ឋរំនេះនឹងឲ្យជូនគាត់មកកន្លែងផ្ដល់សក្ខីកម្មវិញនៅម៉ោង3ខ្វះ15នាទីសម្រាប់